Martha boards the plane with nothing but a worn-out duffel bag and a sleeping toddler in her arms. The weight of the past 6 months presses down on her shoulders. The abandoned apartment, the unpaid bills, the threatening letters from collection agencies. Her ex-husband vanished without a word, leaving behind only debt and broken promises. The only thing she has left are a one-way ticket to her childhood hometown in Alabama and Oliver, her 2-year-old son, whose quiet breaths against her chest are the only comfort she knows. The flight is long, the cabin air-stale. Martha fights exhaustion, afraid to close her eyes even for a moment. If she sleeps, she might wake up to another nightmare. Oliver stirs, his small fingers clutching her sleeve. Across the aisle, a man watches them with quiet intensity. He is dressed in a tailored suit that speaks of wealth, but his expression is unreadable, somewhere between weariness and curiosity. When Martha finally succumbs to sleep, her head tipping forward, the man does something unexpected. Without a word, he reaches into his coat pocket and pulls out a small stuffed bear. He offers it to Oliver, who blinks up at him with wide, trusting eyes. The man then signals a flight attendant, murmuring a request for warm milk. When it arrives, he tests the temperature carefully before handing it to the child. Martha wakes just in time to see the scene. Oliver content in the stranger's care, the man's hands steady and sure. She stiffens, instinctively pulling Oliver closer. The man leans back, offering no explanation, no unnecessary words. His silence is deliberate, as if he understands her wariness. For the rest of the flight, he keeps his distance, but his gaze lingers, not predatory, but assessing, as if he's piecing together a puzzle only he can see. When the plane lands, Martha hurries through the terminal, eager to disappear into the crowd. But before she can reach the exit, the man appears beside her, matching her pace effortlessly. His voice, when he finally speaks, is calm, measured. He makes her an offer, not charity, but a transaction. A year of pretending to be his fiancée. In return, he will erase her debts, secure a home for Oliver, and give her a fresh start. Martha hesitates. Nothing in life comes without strings. But then Oliver, who has never spoken a word to a stranger before, looks at the man and says, clear as day, "Dad." The word hangs between them, heavy with unintended meaning. The man's expression flickers, something raw and unguarded flashing in his eyes before it's gone. Martha doesn't believe in signs, but she believes in survival. And right now, survival means saying yes. She has no way of knowing this decision will unravel secrets far beyond her own. That the man's world is built on shadows just as deep as hers. That this flight was never just a coincidence. But for now, all she knows is this: she has nothing left to lose. The Blacktown car glides through wrought iron gates, crunching over gravel as it approaches the Cassiday estate. Martha presses her face to the window, taking in the sprawling mansion with its ivy-covered stone walls and manicured gardens. It looks like something out of a magazine, impeccable, untouchable. Oliver, sensing her tension, clutches her hand tighter. The moment they step inside, the air changes. The grand foyer is all marble and gilded mirrors, cold despite the roaring fireplace. A woman stands at the top of the staircase, her posture rigid, her silver hair coiled into an unforgiving bun. Eleanor, Cassiday. Even before introductions, Martha knows this is the woman who holds the keys to everything, including her fate. Eleanor's gaze sweeps over Martha's thrift store dress, her worn shoes, the way Oliver hides behind her legs. A barely there curl of her lip is the only sign of disapproval, but it's enough. She descends the stairs with measured steps, her sharp eyes dissecting every flaw. When she stops in front of them, the silence stretches, thick with unspoken judgment. A younger woman, Amelia, the sister, lingers in the doorway of the parlor, arms crossed. Her expression is neutral, but the way her fingers tap against her elbow betrays impatience. Only the youngest brother, lingering near the fireplace, offers a hesitant nod. His smile is fleeting, but it's the closest thing to warmth Martha has seen since arriving. Eleanor speaks first. No greeting, no pleasantries. She lists rules like a general briefing a soldier. Meals are at 7 sharp, no exceptions. Martha's presence in the East Wing is restricted. Oliver's noise will not disrupt the household. Every word is a brick in the wall between them. The days that follow are a gauntlet of silent tests. The maid accidentally delivers Martha's breakfast cold. Amelia conveniently forgets to mention family gatherings until they're already underway. At dinner, Eleanor watches with hawk-like precision as Martha navigates the array of polished silverware, her lips thinning every time hesitation shows. Oliver becomes the unwitting battleground. Eleanor insists on proper toys. No stuffed animals with loose stitching, no cheap plastic. When he reaches for Martha during tea, Eleanor corrects him with a clipped, "Children do not interrupt." The words sting, but Martha bites her tongue. She watches Oliver's confused eyes, his tiny hands balling into fists, and forces herself to stay still. This is the price. At night, in the too large guest room, Martha counts the cracks in the ceiling. Oliver sleeps curled against her, his breath warm on her collarbone. The house creaks around them, full of whispers she isn't meant to hear. Once, she catches Amelia and Eleanor speaking in hushed tones in the hall, the word gold digger slithering under the door. But then, small cracks form in the ice. The youngest brother leaves a stack of children's books outside her door. The cook, after a week of bland meals, slips Oliver a sugar-dusted cookie when Eleanor isn't looking. These tiny acts of rebellion give Martha hope, but hope is dangerous here. Because the truth is, she's trapped. The contract is signed, the debt's erased. There's no walking away, not when every exit leads back to nothing. So she straightens her spine, smooths her dress, and steps into the next test. Eleanor is watching. They all are. And Martha has 12 months to prove she belongs. The grandfather clock in the hallway strikes 2 a.m. when Martha first notices the unnatural heat radiating from Oliver's small body. At first, she thinks it's just the heavy blankets, but when she touches his forehead, panic grips her chest. His skin burns beneath her fingertips, his breathing shallow and rapid. The thermometer confirms her fears, 103 degrees. For a moment, Martha freezes, her medical knowledge reduced to useless fragments. The mansion's vastness suddenly feels like a trap, its winding hallways too long, its occupants too far away. She gathers Oliver in her arms, his limp body alarmingly light, and rushes into the corridor. The house is eerily silent, the kind of silence that amplifies every footstep. Martha's bare feet slap against cold marble as she heads toward the family wing, her mind racing. Should she wake Amelia, the butler? The thought of facing Eleanor's wrath for disturbing her sleep wars with the terror of watching Oliver suffer. Then, as if summoned by her desperation, a door at the end of the hall opens. Eleanor stands there, wrapped in a silk robe, her hair freed from its usual tight coil. For once, she looks her age, the lines around her eyes deeper, the sternness softened by sleep. Their eyes meet. No words are exchanged, but something passes between them, a silent understanding that transcends their strained relationship. Eleanor's gaze drops to Oliver, and in that instant, every rule, every barrier between them shatters. Eleanor moves with surprising speed, taking Oliver from Martha's arms without hesitation. Her hands, usually so precise and controlled, now work with urgent purpose. She barks orders, cold towels, fever reducer, a call to the family doctor. But there's no malice in her voice, only focused determination. Martha watches, stunned, as Eleanor lowers Oliver into a cool bath, murmuring reassurances in a tone no one in this house has likely ever heard. The older woman's fingers are gentle as they wipe his brow, her stern mouth softening when Oliver's glassy eyes focus on her face. Hours blur together. The fever breaks just as dawn stains the sky pink. Exhausted, Martha slumps in a chair, Oliver now sleeping peacefully in the nest of blankets Eleanor insisted on fetching herself. The older woman stands by the window, her silhouette outlined in pale morning light. When the household stirs to life, news of the night's event spreads. Amelia arrives first, her usual cool demeanor cracking at the sight of Eleanor still in her rumpled robe. The youngest brother lingers in the doorway, his expression unreadable. At breakfast, someone asks about the child's name again. Oliver, Martha says, and the room stills. Silverware clinks against fine china as Eleanor's breath catches, just slightly, almost imperceptibly. The name hangs in the air, weighted with history. That afternoon, Martha finds a tea tray outside her door. Earl Grey with honey, just how she likes it. No note, but the china is Eleanor's personal set. When she ventures downstairs, no one comments on her presence in the library. Amelia even shifts slightly on the sofa, making room. Small changes, but to Martha, they feel seismic. The invisible barriers that once confined her begin to dissolve, brick by brick. That night, for the first time, she doesn't count the cracks in the ceiling. She watches Oliver's steady breathing and allows herself to hope, just a little, that this icy house might someday feel like home. The seasons change around them, painting the Vermont estate in new colors. Summer's lush greens give way to autumn's fiery palette. Then winter's crisp whites blanket the grounds. With each passing month, Martha finds herself slipping deeper into the rhythm of the Cassiday household. No longer an outsider looking in, but not quite family either. Somewhere in between, in a space that grows more comfortable with time. The transformation is subtle at first. The staff begins addressing her as Miss Martha, rather than just ma'am. The cook starts including her favorite dishes in the weekly menu. Even Eleanor's morning interrogations soften into something resembling conversation, though the older woman would never admit to such familiarity. Her relationship with the heir evolves in quiet, unexpected ways. What began as stiff formality, carefully choreographed public appearances, and rehearsed smiles for family gatherings, slowly shifts into something more natural. He starts seeking her out, not for show, but for company. They share newspapers over breakfast, debate current affairs, and sometimes, when the house is asleep, they meet by accident in the kitchen, both unable to sleep. Those midnight encounters are the most dangerous, filled with lingering glances and conversations that stretch longer than intended. Martha notices the changes in him, the way his shoulders relax when she enters the room, how his laugh comes easier these days. Once, she catches him watching her with an expression that makes her pulse quicken, but he looks away before she can decipher it. Neither of them speaks of it. The contract between them remains an unspoken barrier, its terms too clearly defined to risk misunderstanding. Oliver, oblivious to the complexities of adult relationships, bridges the gap without trying. His attachment to the man grows with each passing week. What began as childish imitation, copying his posture, mimicking his mannerisms, blossoms into genuine affection. The first time Oliver calls him Dad, in front of the family, Martha's breath catches. She expects correction, perhaps even anger, but the heir only hesitates for a second before ruffling Oliver's hair, his throat working as he swallows whatever emotion the word stirs in him. Eleanor observes it all with sharp eyes. She notices the way her grandson lingers near Martha, how his voice softens when he speaks to Oliver. At dinner one evening, she watches as Martha unknowingly uses his preferred coffee cup, and he doesn't correct her, simply takes a sip as if it's the most natural thing in the world. A knowing look passes between Eleanor and Amelia, but neither comments. The estate itself seems to respond to the shifting dynamics. Rooms that once felt cold and imposing now welcome Martha with familiar comfort. She develops habits, a favorite reading chair in the library, a preferred walking path through the gardens. Even the portraits lining the halls seem less judgmental, their painted gazes no longer following her with silent accusation. Yet beneath the surface, uncertainty lingers. Martha catches herself imagining what life could be like if this were real, then quickly banishes the thought. She reminds herself daily that this is temporary, that contracts have expiration dates, and heirs to fortunes don't fall in love with women like her, women with nothing but debt and a child in tow. But then there are moments that challenge her resolve, like when she falls ill and he cancels an important meeting to stay home, reading to Oliver so she can rest. Or when Eleanor gifts her a stunning emerald green dress for the annual gala, murmuring about how it matches the family jewels. Small things, easily dismissed, yet together they form a pattern that makes Martha's careful walls tremble. The hardest part is the pretending, not the act they show the world, but the pretense they maintain with each other. The way they both carefully avoid acknowledging whatever grows between them, as if giving it a name might break some unspoken rule. Oliver, unaware of the delicate balance, continues to bind them together with his innocent affection. He drags the heir to see his drawings, insists he tuck him in at night, and once, in a moment that steals Martha's breath, falls asleep curled against his chest during a thunderstorm. That night, she finds them both in the nursery. Oliver safe in his bed, the heir still seated in the rocking chair, watching over him with an expression that makes Martha's heart ache. Eleanor's intervention comes unexpectedly. One afternoon, she summons Martha to the solarium, where the winter sun casts everything in golden light. Without preamble, she slides a velvet box across the table. Inside rests a brooch, the Cassiday crest, an heirloom reserved for family. No need to look so shocked, Eleanor says, though her usual sharpness lacks its bite. The boy calls him father. That makes you something, doesn't it? Martha has no answer. The brooch glints in the sunlight, heavy with meaning. That night, she finds the heir in his study, paperwork spread before him. He looks up when she enters, and for a long moment, they simply stare at each other, the air between them charged with everything left unsaid. Outside, snow begins to fall, blanketing the estate in quiet. Somewhere upstairs, Oliver dreams, unaware that the lines between pretend and real have grown dangerously thin. The morning dawns crisp and clear, the kind of perfect winter day that feels at odds with Martha's churning emotions. She wakes early, watching as pale sunlight filters through the curtains of the guest room. No, her room, though after today it won't be hers anymore. The calendar on the wall mocks her with its circled date, the one they've both been carefully ignoring for weeks. She dresses with deliberate care, choosing the simple navy dress she wore on her first day at the estate. The symmetry feels appropriate, though she can't decide if it's poetic or pathetic. Oliver, sensing her mood, stays unusually quiet as she helps him into his clothes, his small fingers fumbling with the buttons. Breakfast is a tense affair. Eleanor watches her over the rim of her teacup, her gaze knowing. Amelia keeps glancing between Martha and the empty chair at the head of the table. His chair. He's been absent since dawn, locked in his study with the family lawyer. The knowledge sits like lead in Martha's stomach. When the summons comes, Martha presses a kiss to Oliver's forehead and leaves him with the nanny. The walk to the study feels endless, each step echoing through the two quiet halls. She pauses outside the heavy oak door, smoothing her dress with damp palms before knocking. The room smells of leather and ink, the familiar scent that has come to mean comfort over these months. He stands by the window, his back to her, shoulders rigid beneath his tailored suit. The lawyer, a gray-haired man with sharp eyes, rises when she enters and places a thick envelope on the desk between them. Everything is in order, the lawyer says before discreetly exiting, leaving them alone in the weighted silence. Martha doesn't touch the envelope. She already knows what it contains: the deed to a modest house in town, the keys to a sensible car, trust fund paperwork for Oliver's education. All the agreed-upon terms, fulfilled with clinical precision. The completeness of it steals her breath. He finally turns, his face carefully blank. There are shadows under his eyes, as if he hasn't slept. For a long moment, they simply look at each other, the space between them filled with all the words they've never said. When he speaks, his voice is steady, detached. He explains each document in turn, the legal jargon falling between them like a wall. Martha nods when appropriate, her fingers clenched in her lap. This is what she signed up for, what she prepared herself for. A clean break, a fresh start. But then he mentions the last item, a monthly stipend, more generous than they'd originally agreed. Something in Martha snaps. The careful control she's maintained for months fractures, and suddenly she's standing, the chair scraping loudly against the hardwood. He stops mid-sentence, startled. The mask slips just enough for her to see the emotion beneath, the uncertainty, the longing she'd convinced herself she imagined. Oliver's voice echoes down the hall, calling for Papa in that sweet, trusting way of his. The sound seems to break something in both of them. Martha reaches across the desk, not for the envelope, but for his hand. Her fingers tremble as they brush against his, but her voice doesn't waver when she speaks the words that will change everything. Outside, winter sunlight glints off fresh snow, bright and hopeful. Somewhere in the house, Oliver laughs, unaware that his small world is about to expand in ways he can't yet understand. The grandfather clock in the hall chimes noon, marking not just the end of their arrangement, but the beginning of something far more fragile and infinitely more real. The silence in the study stretches, thick with unspoken words and possibilities. Martha's hand still hovers above the unsigned documents, her fingers trembling slightly as they brush against his. The air between them crackles with tension, neither daring to move first, both terrified of breaking this fragile moment. Then the door swings open without warning. Eleanor stands framed in the doorway, her sharp eyes missing nothing. The untouched contracts, their clasped hands, the raw emotion neither can fully hide anymore. A knowing smile tugs at the corners of her mouth as she steps inside, the click of her heels echoing like punctuation marks in the quiet room. From her pocket, she produces a small velvet box, its deep blue worn with age. When she opens it, the Cassiday family ring glints in the sunlight, an heirloom passed down through generations, always reserved for true marriages, never arrangements. She sets it deliberately on the desk between the unsigned papers, the message unmistakable. Amelia appears in the doorway behind Eleanor, her usual composed expression fractured by surprise. She takes in the scene with widening eyes, her brother's unguarded face, Martha's tear-streaked cheeks, their grandmother's triumphant stance. For once, the ever-poised Amelia seems at a loss for words. Down the hall, Oliver's laughter floats through the house, mingling with the nanny's patient replies. The sound seems to break the last of the resistance between them. He reaches for Martha properly this time, his fingers intertwining with hers as he pulls her closer. The contracts lie forgotten as he finally speaks the words they've both been too afraid to say. Eleanor watches with satisfaction as the pieces fall into place exactly as she predicted. She exchanges a glance with Amelia, who hesitates only a moment before nodding, a silent surrender to the inevitable. The Cassiday women have always known how to protect their own, even if it means bending the rules. Outside, the winter garden lies dormant under a blanket of snow, but beneath the surface, new life already prepares to emerge. The house itself seems to exhale, its ancient walls settling as if welcoming a long-awaited resolution. Cook begins preparing a celebratory dinner without being asked, the staff exchanging knowing smiles as they polish the good silver. Oliver comes running when called, his small feet pounding against the hardwood floors. He skids to a stop in the study doorway, taking in the unusual gathering with wide eyes. Without hesitation, he launches himself forward, crashing into their intertwined legs and wrapping his arms around them both. Eleanor picks up the ring box with deliberate care and places it in Martha's free hand, closing her fingers around it with unexpected gentleness. The weight of the gesture settles between them, not just acceptance, but belonging. Amelia steps forward too, her earlier skepticism melting into something resembling reluctant approval as she ruffles Oliver's hair. The grandfather clock chimes the hour, its deep tones resonating through the house. Somewhere in the city, Martha's old apartment sits empty. The unpaid bills and collection notices nothing but ashes in the fireplace of her former life. The future stretches before them, not as a contract with an end date, but as something far more permanent. And as the winter sun dips below the horizon, casting the study in golden light, the Cassiday family gathers properly for the first time, not out of obligation or pretense, but because they choose to. The ring remains unclaimed for now, resting safely in Martha's palm, but the promise it represents fills the room more completely than any signed document ever could. Golden afternoon light filters through the arched windows of the Cassiday conservatory, painting the lush indoor plants in warm hues. Martha sits on an overstuffed love seat, her fingers tracing the embossed cover of a leather-bound book, the first edition of her now successful children's series, inspired by Oliver's imaginary adventures. The dedication page bears 3 names in elegant script, a permanent testament to the family she almost walked away from. Across the room, Oliver kneels on a Persian rug, carefully arranging wooden trains along an elaborate track. His tongue pokes out in concentration, just as it did that first day on the plane. Now nearly 4, he chatters happily to himself, weaving elaborate stories about the train's destinations. Every so often, he glances up at the man sitting cross-legged beside him. No longer the heir or her fake fiancé, but simply Dad, the title earned through countless bedtime stories and scraped-knee bandaging sessions. Eleanor enters with her customary grace, though the sharp edges of her demeanor have softened considerably over the past year. She carries a silver tray bearing Martha's favorite tea blend, the steam curling from the delicate china cup. The older woman pauses to press a kiss to Oliver's unruly curls before settling beside Martha, their shoulders brushing comfortably. This new version of Eleanor still commands boardrooms with steel resolve, but at home, she's become the grandmother who sneaks cookies before dinner and tells outrageous bedtime stories. The peace shatters when the house phone rings, an unusual occurrence in an age of cell phones. The butler's measured steps echo through the hall before he appears in the doorway, his normally impassive face tightened with displeasure. He murmurs a name that makes Martha's teacup rattle in its saucer. Her ex-husband has arrived at the gates, demanding to see his son. The change in the room is immediate. Oliver's father rises smoothly, but the tension in his shoulders betrays his anger. Eleanor's fingers tighten around her cane, her knuckles whitening. Only Oliver remains oblivious, humming as he pushes a toy train along its track. Martha sets her cup down with deliberate calm. The panic that once would have gripped her at this moment never comes. Instead, she feels something unexpected, pity. Pity for the man who threw away his family for selfish pursuits, only to come crawling back when he saw pictures of Oliver's birthday party splashed across society magazines. She watches through the window as security handles the confrontation at the wrought iron gates. Her ex-husband's gestures grow increasingly frantic, his face contorted in a mix of desperation and greed. When he catches sight of her silhouette in the window, his expression shifts to something resembling hope, quickly dashed when she turns away without acknowledgement. The legal battles have been brief and brutal. The Cassiday family lawyers made quick work of his flimsy parental claims, especially after uncovering his mountain of debts and questionable business dealings. The restraining order now keeps him 100 yards away at all times, a fact the guards remind him of as they escort him off the property. Oliver tugs at Martha's skirt, holding up a crookedly drawn picture, a stick-figure family with 4 members and an oversized dog. She sweeps him into a hug, breathing in the familiar scent of crayons and baby shampoo. Over his shoulder, she meets her husband's gaze, the silent communication between them as effortless as breathing now. Later that evening, after Oliver has been tucked into bed and the house settles into its nighttime rhythm, Martha stands on the terrace overlooking the gardens. The first stars twinkle above the manicured hedges, their light reflecting in the koi pond below. A year ago, she stood in this same spot, convinced her borrowed happiness would be ripped away. Now, the engraved band on her finger catches the moonlight, its vintage diamonds winking alongside the simple gold wedding band she chose herself. Inside, the sound of piano music drifts through the open French doors. Eleanor plays an old jazz standard while Amelia sings along off-key, their laughter floating through the grand old house. Her husband joins her on the terrace, his arms slipping around her waist as he presses a kiss to her temple. No words are needed. Martha closes her eyes, letting the moment imprint itself in her memory. The crisp night air, the distant music, the solid warmth beside her. Somewhere in the city, her past self still exists. The exhausted woman on that plane, clutching her son and praying for a miracle. She sends that version of herself a silent thank you for being brave enough to say yes to the strange man with the stuffed bear. Fate, she's learned, works in mysterious ways. Sometimes it arrives as a business proposition on a bad day. Sometimes it wears the face of an intimidating matriarch who hides her heart behind strict rules. And sometimes, most miraculously of all, it looks like a little boy calling the right man Dad at exactly the right moment. The piano music swells as she turns toward the light, toward home, toward the family she chose and the family that chose her back.